Good morning. Welcome to Freeway Bible Study. Today, Genesis 46. Jacob goes to Egypt. My name is Kurt Bell. I'm your host of this project. I'm an atheist. I don't believe the supernatural ideas in the Bible, but I am interested in stories, so I read it and try to learn what I can. Today we're going to witness Jacob, aka Israel, making his move down to Egypt at the behest of his son Joseph, who has become something of a big man in Egypt. And we know that Joseph has a lot of power, and when he encountered his brothers who had come to Egypt to get food and some relief from the famine, and it was quite a dramatic bit of storytelling there, as he basically kind of played them along a little bit until he finally let up and shared who he really was. And now the game, the gig is up, so to speak, and it's all a happy ending, and everyone's going to go down to Egypt to live in the land of Goshen and prosper. So Jacob has assembled his families, and they've loaded up the carts that Pharaoh sent. Remember, Pharaoh sent some carts to pack the women and the children, and Pharaoh specifically told Jacob to not bring any of their goods from Canaan because they would be supplied with all the best of Egypt when they arrive. But it's hard to give up your stuff. So, nevertheless, Jacob packs up all their good stuff from Canaan, and no one can hold them against them, right? And bring that along. And on the way down, so he's got up all the family. Oh, and there's numbers. We have a bit of a number bit where he basically identifies all of the individuals that he's going to bring down to Egypt. And that includes, I count 13 sons. I think one or two of them are deceased, but their wives should be around, right? Or their slaves or their concubines, one or the other. And the total number is 70 individuals that are going to Egypt with Jacob. I don't know if that counts Jacob himself as well in that number. And that's interesting because of that 70, 66 that's 66 excluding the wives. That leaves, sounds like a Broadway musical, that leaves 4 brides for 13 brothers, right? Not a good matchup. So I was wondering, and I'm not necessarily going through the Bible picking out this stuff, but when it strikes me, when it comes up, I can't help but notice that, hey, that's a strange number. 4 wives for 13 brothers. Back in those days, wouldn't we expect it to be the opposite? 4 brothers and 13 wives? Isn't that the way polygamy works? It's usually that proportion, gender proportion, rather than the other. But nevertheless, there it is. So I started to wonder maybe that they're not counting the slaves and the concubine girls. But then I noticed the name Bilhah in the list that was provided in Genesis 46. And Bilhah, you'll remember, was the slave girl or the servant girl of Rachel. So she seems to be listed, so I'm not really sure. But let's let that be. So then they're on their way down to Egypt. And Jacob stops at a well-known stopping point, watering hole, so to speak, along the way, and that's at Beersheba. And they stop at Beersheba to rest a little bit, and that's well known because that's where Abraham and Jacob's father also stopped to pray and build a little altar. And while they're at Beersheba, during the night, God speaks to Jacob. And it's interesting how in the King James, in the New International Edition, it doesn't quite have the quotation. Well, it does quote it, but it doesn't sounds different. But in the King James Edition, it sounds like God's trying to, rouse Jacob from his sleep. He's an old man after all. He's like, Jacob! Yeah, I was kind of struck by the kind of almost narrative quality of that. Yeah. And whereas I didn't get the same feeling from the New International Edition. But he says, Jacob, wake up. Wake up. I go, yes, Lord, here I am. And it specifically says this is in a vision. So we don't know that he actually is speaking to God, but maybe just having a dream about it or hallucination about it. And how far do you trust those? Why do we trust the Old Testament hallucinations and dreams more than ones we have now? Can't God still speak to us like that? If someone wakes up and comes to me tomorrow claiming that they heard God speaking to them in a dream, should we believe it? So anyway, God says, Jacob, Jacob, wake up. So basically the age-old adage, don't be afraid, I'm with you. He says, don't be afraid to go to Egypt. I'll be with you and protect you and make the many nations of you. And Jacob's like, oh, yeah, the old song and dance. We've heard this so many times. Like I said before, God's always telling Abraham and his descendants, and even all the way back to Noah, that he's going to make a multitude of their seed, which he kind of has done a pretty good job with Jacob with 13 sons, maybe 10 or 11 of those extant. So he says that, go ahead and go down to Egypt, get back to bed, you're fine. And so that's what happens. And so then he makes his way down to Egypt, and there he meets his son. Now here I may be losing it a little bit. He meets Joseph, who wraps his hands around, I think I'm okay, he wraps his hands around his father, places his head upon his neck, does Joseph, with regard to Jacob, his father, and weeps for joy. There's long weeping for joy at this happy reunion. And Jacob, who's so happy, says, now I can die in peace at last. I have seen my son Joseph. And that's it. So it's just a travel and a meeting at the end. Not a very long chapter. So that's it. So next time, off to Genesis 47. Take care, everybody. Have a great day. Make it a good life. Bye-bye.